crocheting these toadstools mushrooms. And if you follow the pattern that I posted in the description, you will know how to make it. All you need is pretty much a single crochet knowledge. There's not much sewing going on, except you have to know the French knot for these, but they're really easy and possible to find a video online for a French knot. I will definitely try to explain how to make it in the description as well, but if you get confused because I'm not as good at explaining, you should check out a video and then try to attempt these mushrooms. They usually take about 30 minutes as well as the eggs. They are no sewing, but the color change in here is pretty much just single crochet the color to the second color that you want to start doing, and then the next stitch, instead of doing a single crochet, you do a slip stitch to make the color change not as noticeable. I am also just now started on the color change, so I will be talking to you guys. I am on round 10, and round 10 requires 2 back loop only single crochet. So when it says BLO, it means back loop only. And so you do 2 times. First single crochet, back loop only, and then second stitch, single crochet, back loop only. as well, because Patricia's body was nowhere nearby. This was no longer a murder case, or just a murder case. This was an active kidnapping case now. Police and family of Patricia still remained optimistic as they conducted massive search for Patty, and there were many volunteers from Great Falls, Montana that helped search for her, hoping that she's still alive. Unfortunately, Patricia's body was eventually found, and it was found at the bottom of a rocky ravine, and it was 8 miles away from where the car was found. Patricia's body was found fully clothed, so police at the time did not think that Patricia was ever assaulted. During autopsy, it was discovered that Duane was most likely alive for a few hours after being shot in the head. And it was also discovered that Patricia was most likely assaulted, but there was no technology to analyze the DNA evidence at the time. However, coroners still collected some DNA evidence from the scene, and they did some swabs and left the evidence for decades to be stored carefully. There were also wounds that were found on the body of Patricia that were caused by blunt force trauma, indicating that Patricia and the person who killed her, they had a struggle. A few days prior to the murders, Patricia's mom told police that she had a conversation with Duane, who looked visibly upset, and she decided to ask him what was bothering him. Duane responded that he has the blues and that he had an argument with a friend. That friend was also questioned, but eventually was ruled out as a suspect for some reason. The whole town of Great Falls was devastated, and they rallied together to bring this case to justice and find the killer. The bullet that shot Duane was never found at that moment, as it went through the school, and as it seemed like it went through the tree, and it was stuck inside a tree. The recovery of this bullet would let investigators know the caliber of the weapon that was used to kill Duane, and it would open up a lot more in this case. So now we fast forward to November of 1989, when this cold case was reopened again, bottom half because it's been 33 years at that time since the murders happened. However, when they finally got the bullet out, they could not match the bullet to any firearm involving any crime. And now, guys, I will put in some of the stuffing inside my little mushroom, so I don't close it without any stuffing. I just put it as I go. So I will pause for a second and do this right now. However, police did have some potential suspects that they thought were the murderers, but they did not have that much evidence against them. One of the suspects was named Duane Edwards, and this person was arrested for burglary in Montana, nearby Great Falls, in 1956. He was known for robbing gas stations across the country, and he was also known for escaping prisons. And in 1961, Edwards was also put on FBI's most wanted list. After getting arrested in 1962, he was eventually released in 1967. In 2009, he was arrested again, and this time he pleaded on killing 4 people. He also confessed of murdering his own son, Danny Boy Edwards, in a scheme of collecting $250,000 of life insurance money. The reason why he was a suspect for this case was because his victims fit that criteria, and he tended to go for couples that were hanging out in Lover's Lane as well. Another suspect was James Joseph, with the nickname Whitey Bogle. He was a repetitive criminal and has been arrested in 1951. He was in a Great Falls area when the killings occurred as well, but there was no further evidence that proved of his involvement in this case. Now we move on to 2012, when Sergeant Gardner was assigned to this cold case. The surgeon stated that the DNA evidence that was retrieved from Patricia's swab was actually sent to a crime lab in 2001 and found that the DNA was not Duane's, and there was no match for it. So unfortunately, she was most likely raped. The surgeon recreated the DNA sample using a new BODE, B-O-D-E technology, and in 2019 the sample recreation was finally successful. They decided to compare the samples to the DNA that was submitted by the public, by the members of the public, to open source DNA databases. That is similar to databases like 23andMe. This sample was compatible with other samples that were submitted by 3 other people. After the DNA samples were collected from people that they found and their relatives, it was determined that the most likely match from the DNA that was recovered from Patricia's swab was a person that was named Kenneth Gould. However, Kenneth Gould unfortunately passed away in 2007, and his remains were cremated. So the investigators ended up reaching out to Kenneth Gould's children that were still alive, and they agreed to submit their DNA. And in July of 2021, the DNA matched, and investigators announced the discovery to the public. It was found that Kenneth Gould was in Great Falls, Montana. At the time of the murders, he was 29 years old. He also liked to ride his horses in the Lovers Lane area as well. He married his wife when he was 25, and his wife was 16, the same age as Patricia. He also lived about a mile away from where Patricia lived with her family. So, is it possible that he might have seen her and fell in love with her? He was living with his family and children. Police never even suspected him when looking for a suspect, as he did not have any criminal records. He might have even been one of the people that was one of the volunteers to be searching for her when people of Great Falls, Montana joined together to search for Patricia, and there were thousands of volunteers at that time, so he might have been blending in with those people. Suspiciously, only a month after the killings, Kenneth moved his whole family of 5 children and his wife to a different town in Montana. First, he moved to Tracy, Montana. Then a few months later, they all moved to Geraldine, Montana. Then they moved to another city called Hamilton, Montana. And eventually, they completely moved out of Montana, going to a state of Missouri. And this all happened within a year from the murders. So, it's kind of suspicious. But probably keep. So if his daughter even agreed that he might have done something like that, that means he probably was the person. However, there was no connection whatsoever between the victims and Kenneth Gould, and he had no criminal history prior to this, so no one really knows the motive. And if he has killed maybe more people than what is known, we will never know now, because he took his secrets to his grave. Well, thanks for watching, and I am not good at talking and multitasking, so I did a few rows, but I still have a few more to go, and then once I get to the bottom of the little mushroom, there's gonna be 6 stitches left. Just use a yarn needle to collect those stitches together with back loops or front loops, and then put them together, and then stick the needle inside, and then come out in the red part of the mushroom along with the yarn, so that way you can make French knots, make it a real cute mushroom with the white spots in there.